Hello everyone and welcome back to the garage. That's right, we're back home safely, not entirely soundly, but we've made it home from our trip and I've got a lot of footage that I need to get through before I start putting out videos from the actual trip itself. So what I thought I would do is just check in with y'all, let you know that I'm here, let you know the bike made it home, that I made it home, and I wanted to just give you some very quick takeaways that I've been sort of ruminating on about the trip. So the first thing I want to start with is the obvious, and that's this. So I'm going to talk about this a lot in the video where this actually happened, but the short of it is I was in a rural place in South Dakota exploring this campground that has sort of a history with me. Everything was going great. I was up tooling around on the gravel roads, no problem, and on the descent from that campground, there's sort of a steep, gravelly descent. I was probably going a smidge too fast on tires that are definitely not made for any sort of real off-roading. And I went to give the bike a little bit of brake to slow down, and it lost traction completely, and there was nothing I could do to regain control, so I just sort of dumped the bike. Very slow, I was probably going 7 miles per hour. Very minimal damage to the bike. I scratched the front bumper bar here and down on the lower bar here, and I scratched this cover plate that I've already taken off. I've already ordered the replacement parts, a couple $100. I was honestly very surprised at how minimal the damage to the bike was. No other scratching on the bike, like nothing in here got scratched, none of the main panels. Honestly, kind of the best case outcome for the bike. Not the best outcome for me, however. Now, I have taken many spills on many different bikes, never seriously injured myself. As you know, I wear all the protective gear. You know, I do have pretty good boots. I know there's this whole debate about adventure boots. I'm pretty confident with my boots. They do have pretty strong protection. They're obviously not like enduro boots, but I think for adventure boots, they're actually one of the better models out there. I want to be very clear. What happened in this accident was the bike did not land on my foot. So it did not crush my foot. So this isn't like an impact injury. What happened was, as I came off the bike, my foot got sort of pinned and it got torqued really quickly and really dramatically. So it pulled my ligaments very tightly, very quickly. And what that did was it actually pulled a piece of bone away from the inside of my ankle. It's called an avulsion fracture. Very minor. I had an MRI done. All the other ligaments and tendons look good. Just this small little piece of bone broke off. And it should, in theory, all heal on its own in 4 to 6 weeks. So that's the short of it. I didn't think that I had broken anything at the time. It was very painful, but I could put weight on it. So I continued to ride. I got an x-ray done immediately after I did it at an urgent care, and they said that they didn't see a break. So they're like, you know, take it easy, but you're okay to ride home. Just when you get home, have a follow-up checkup. So that's what I did. On Monday, I went to my doctor here. She said, well, that doesn't look good. It's still swollen. Sent me to the ortho clinic, and they did a bunch of imagery and said, yep, we see a fracture. So thankfully, like I said, the soft tissue looks pretty good. I just need to wear this boot for about a month. So that's where I'm at. First impressions, now that we're back with the bike itself. I am very pleased with how the bike handled and with how it did on this trip. But there was a lot of you out there that were like, ooh, this is a risky move, taking this bike on a 9,000 mile trip, but it did really well. The only functional problem I had with the bike, sort of mechanical problem, was I had a little issue with the chain, and I'm not entirely sure what caused it. But what happened was, after about 5,000 or 6,000 miles, I did make a chain adjustment. I made sure it was back in spec, but it's possible I adjusted it too tightly or incorrectly. But what happened was, when I got up to a certain speed and a certain like resonance from the engine, the chain started wobbling from side to side really quickly. And so I managed to get into a shop in Rapid City, South Dakota, Really great shop, by the way. It's called Rice's Motorsports. They saw me right away. It was fantastic. Gave them 5-star review. And basically the tech came out and said, damn man, your chain is garbage. He said, your chain is shot. It's kind of well known that the chains that come on these bikes aren't great to begin with. So he's like, I'm gonna put like a premium chain on your bike. And he goes, you should be able to ride the rest of the entire trip without even having to adjust it. And sure enough, I checked it every day, and every day it was exactly the same spec. So I've never adjusted it in the next 4,000 miles, and it's been great ever since. It never has vibrated. So that was my only hiccup mechanically with the bike, was the chain. I did do 2 oil changes on the ride, although I definitely pushed it. You know, I wanted to stick to a strict 3,000 mile schedule, and due to a big mess up on day 3 on my part, which you'll hear all about, I pushed that first oil change to about 4,000 miles instead of 3. So I definitely went over, but I was running the synthetic Motorex. I figured an extra 1,000 miles isn't gonna kill it. It's perfectly fine. I'm not doing an extra 10,000 miles, but I managed to find the same Motorex 10W50 in 2 different shops along the way. So I did the first oil change in the parking lot of an AutoZone, and I was able to put the dirty oil right back in the containers and bring it right back into the shop, and they took it, so it was great. I did the second oil change in the parking lot of a motel at like 1 in the morning, and also using the Motorex 10W50 oil, and it worked great. And then I had to carry that used oil to the next, like O'Reilly's or wherever it is I dropped it off. I can't even remember. So I did do 2 oil changes, no problems there. Everything went perfectly great. Everything went well. I changed the air filter at about 6,000 or 7,000 miles. And honestly, I didn't need to. The old air filter was perfectly clean. It had a little bit of dirt in it, but it was fine. I will say though, the screws that you have to take out to put in the air filter are absolute garbage, and I already stripped one of them. So I know there's videos out there about this. It is a big problem with this bike. It's very easy to put the air filter in, but the cap to get in there is really frustrating. And so I spent like 40 minutes getting that dang cap off with these little like Allen wrenches. It was terrible. So that was a little bit of a gripe. Fuel mileage was decent. I would say it was sort of around 50 to 55 if I was just kind of cruising down secondary roads. But if I was riding on the interstate, fully wrung out, I was getting like 47, 48, so it wasn't great. I was stopping for gas like every 150 to 180 miles, and I know that sounds excessive, but it also gave me a nice kind of milestone to reach for a break. It's like 150 miles, that's a couple hours. It's a really nice interval to sort of stop for stretch breaks and for food and hydration breaks. Only one time did I actually carry extra fuel in my little fuel canister, and I didn't even use it. So with the amount of highway I rode, I just never needed extra fuel, even with that sort of crappy gas mileage. That brings me to the next point is I brought a lot of stuff on this trip that I really didn't use. And I think if I were to do something like this again and stick strictly to highways like I did, I would have eliminated a lot of stuff from my kit. Like I brought the drone, I used it twice. I brought a bunch of stuff for filming, never used it. I used my tools a lot and my like emergency kit a lot, like with all my extra gear and bolts and nuts and things. So I definitely used all that stuff. I had to clean my windshield every night from bugs. It was really bad. And so what I did was I brought this little spray container of that muck off bug remover, and I sprayed it and would let it sit for like 10 minutes. And then I used these individual glass cleaners that I bought somewhere online, Blue Magic. I just brought like 10 of these, and every night I would use one to clean my windshield after I sprayed that bug remover, and it was great. It like cleaned everything off without scratching. So yeah, these things work great. The Easy Pass worked amazing, worked perfectly. I was a little worried in Illinois that it wasn't working, but I got all the charges on the Easy Pass, and so I probably spent about $80 in tolls just through all the East Coast states, but I mounted it right on the top of the dash, picked it up every time. So if you're gonna do this trip, highly recommend getting an Easy Pass or some sort of toll. transponder for the East Coast. It can be through multiple states. I just happened to get mine through New York. The airbag vest, I do want to speak a little bit about this. So this is the Helite Turtle 2 in a size medium, and this was the perfect size for me. I wore it 100% of the time, and it fit great over my coat. As you can see, it's a little long in the back, so it kept kind of like, as I would sit, it would sort of push up a little bit, and it would kind of dig into my neck sometimes. That was the only thing that I didn't like about it. And also, the way I've got the tether mounted is under the seat right here, you can see. And what I realized was I didn't have it tight enough. It was too loose. And the reason I know this is because when I took my spill, South Dakota, I sort of just fell off the bike right to the side of it, but as the bike was falling, and so it never pulled hard enough to actually set off my airbag. So in one way I was like, well, that's great. I still have a charge in case I have an even more serious spill, but also I bought this damn thing so that it would go off if I got into a spill, and it didn't even go off because I didn't move far enough from the bike given how loose I had this. So I've since tightened this up now so that even when I stand, it's pulling decently. The bike is definitely heavy, a little heavier than I'm comfortable with. So I struggled a little bit on some turns, and like I was always nervous I was gonna drop the bike. And ironically, I never dropped it. Not one time did I drop the bike on any of the trip, except for when I slid out on that gravel. That was the only time I dropped the bike, and it's just very frustrating because, you know, of course now I've got to replace all this damaged stuff if I want to sell it, just because of that one stupid spill. And now I've got a broken ankle because of it too. So it's just like, I want to talk about entertainment for a moment. So I always wear earplugs when I ride, and normally even on long rides, it's just me and my own thoughts. But on this trip, I was like, I'm gonna be going 9,000 miles. It'd be nice to have some music. So what I did was I bought these headphones. They're real cheap. They were like 30 bucks on Amazon, called MiPeace, and they're basically these little standard style earplugs, but they have a little speaker in their tips, and so you kind of push them way into your ear, and so it's an earplug, but it also allows you to listen to music. And so what I would do is I'd put these in, pair the headset with the motorcycle so that it allowed the CarPlay on the motorcycle to play music through my headphones, and that allowed me to control the volume and pause and skip tracks from the controller on the motorcycle. So it worked great. I'd put that on, listen to a whole album, and be like, wow, I just went 120 miles. That's fantastic. So that really helped. Highly recommend these. 30 bucks. I actually bought a second pair. I liked it so much. A lot of frustrations on this ride. A lot of things kept happening to just kind of really irritate me, and a few times I let those frustrations get the better of me, and I'm upset at myself that I let that happen. The whole point of this trip was to sort of just be at peace and find some sort of comfort in this long ride. And a couple of times I was just really frustrated and not in a good mental place. One of those times was, as I said, I lost my wallet. Thankfully, I recovered it all, which was a crazy story. The other time was obviously when I took that spill, but I also got a nail in my tire, which I had to plug. I hit some really bad traffic, made a couple of navigational mistakes, which cost me huge amounts of time because of traffic jams. And it's like, I was just really angry with myself. So not until about halfway through the trip did I finally just find some solace and like, okay, I knew there was going to be challenges. This is all part of it. It's all part of it. Embrace it. And so as I rode away from South Dakota with a broken ankle and new chain, the sort of skies parted a little bit, and it was sort of like an entirely different ride on that second half. So what I'm going to do now is I filmed some footage at the very end of the ride. After I actually got my last receipt, I parked the bike on top of this like mountain pass in Arizona, and I just kind of brain dumped some initial thoughts. And so I'm going to transition over to that now so you can get some immediate reactions as I finished the ride, some of my first thoughts as things were settling in that I had actually completed the entire 48 state challenge. All right, well, we're sitting up here on Buffalo Pass, and There's definitely some weather starting to brew around here, so I'm not gonna linger. I don't think I'm gonna fly the drone either, but I still wanted to stop because it's beautiful here and I have time to stop. I'm not pushing for any sort of goal anymore. I'm just trying to stay safe and have fun. This is it. Arizona. Red Valley, Arizona. $3.20 of gas. This little piece of paper right here marks the end of a 10-day, 9,000-mile journey. It's a little piece of paper. It's truly remarkable when you put it in that context that you can have a silly little printout from a machine that is somehow that significant. It feels really cool to be sitting up here, feeling the stillness, not chaotically rushing all the time. Don't get me wrong, I'm glad I did it that way. It was really fun. I like a good challenge like that. If I ever do any sort of grand tour of the US again via two wheels, I am going to take my sweet time. Might be something I do in retirement whenever that day comes, and actually smell those proverbial roses, suck the marrow out of it, not just go, go, go. But I'm still very glad I did it this way. I wanted the challenge. I wanted to see if I could do it. I know I can do these really hard things when I put my mind to it, like finish Barkley or finish Leadville or through hike the Pacific Crest Trail or whatever, dissertation, 7 years of grad school. And I knew this was going to be a lot more of a mental game, and I definitely had my low points. Like, you know, I let the frustrations get the better of me a lot, as opposed to just taking a deep breath and being like, all right, how do we solve this problem? But all the little things that initially got me, like, oh, I got a nail in my tire, once I took a step back and was like, wait, these are tubeless tires. I have a patch kit. I have a plug kit. This is the whole reason that we like tubeless tires, because you can plug them and then still ride on them. And case in point, I plugged that tire with probably about 4,000 miles on the tire, and now it's sitting with over 9. So I've ridden that tire 5,000 miles with a plug. Perfectly fine. A lot of memories are gonna start coming back, things that I completely forgot about once I start going through the footage. Random places in this country, like random little tiny rural roads through Louisiana, or I don't know, like northern Illinois. There's just so many strange little roads. Riding across that road to Hazel Green, Wisconsin, going back through Vermont, my former home state, really missing it, missing those green hills, but also not missing like getting stuck behind the lines and lines of cars, trying to like navigate those mountain roads, dealing with all that urban traffic in some of those big cities was truly soul-sucking. Honestly, I think the one that got to me the worst was Chicago. DC was bad, but I sort of knew it was going to be bad. Baltimore was pretty bad. The whole like eastern like corridor up through New Jersey and all of it, and then into New York was great until that damn bridge that I took the wrong lane and ended up getting stuck in a 5-lane bridge that was moving to 1 lane. And so I was up there. I think I sat with the bike off for over an hour, just letting it cool off before I actually moved. And that was also on the day that I did an iron butt ride, which made it the most ridiculous day of this entire journey. Was definitely day 3, the East Coast, 1,000-mile wallet freak out city urban nightmare day. That was just, that day had every challenge imaginable in it. That was pretty bad. And then the chain, dealing with getting a new chain, that went pretty smoothly once I just made some calculations and made some phone calls. The oil change situation worked itself out. I thought I was going to have to get oil at O'Reilly's, but I ended up finding 2 different places that stocked the Motorex oil. The place that I stopped in Frederick, Maryland, was an authorized KTM dealer, and they had all the O-rings and everything, all the filters. They had everything I needed to do the oil changes. I could have bought them right there. Had I done a little bit more logistical legwork on the front end, I probably would have figured that out and learned that, and could have just not had to carry that stuff. Speaking of carrying stuff, I definitely brought a lot of stuff that I thought I was going to use that I just didn't use, and I could have easily trimmed my kit down a little smaller. I did finally wear like real pants last night when I went to dinner. I brought like this pair of like rock climbing pants, and I wore them last night to the casino dinner with my free drink. I brought a bunch of stuff for filming, and I just didn't have time to use it or to set up to, you know, stage shots. All that stuff takes so much time to set up shots. So I could have left a lot of that stuff at home. I'm glad I brought my cover. I'm glad I brought my rain gear. I'm glad I had a little bowl, like a travel bowl that I used to eat my muesli every morning. So that was good. I had powdered milk to eat it with. So I had just enough muesli to get me through the whole trip. So I kind of just ate breakfast in my room. Coffee I got on the road, or used the little crappy Keurigs in the rooms. I think the route I planned could definitely use a little work. There's a few places I think I would alter or modify. I think I would try to avoid some of the major cities a little better. But overall, I would say I was pleased with 90% of the route. It was a lot of interstate, but that's the kind of roads where you can go fast, and that's just what I did. Got really lucky with the gas stations that I needed to time, specifically the Florida one. That one was really nerve-wracking, and I got there 15 minutes before it opened, and it did in fact open at 5 like it was advertised to. I was just worried, you know, someone was gonna roll in at like 5:30 or 6, and I was gonna be sitting there waiting forever to get that receipt. The other one that I almost had a mishap on was my second state, Missouri. So I got the Baxter Springs one because it was a 24-hour gas station, and then immediately went into Missouri and tried to get gas, but all the pumps were closed. Every pump was off in Missouri on my stretch. I stopped in multiple places, and finally I looked, and there was like 3 gas stations right on the border. And so I went to all 3, and all 3 were still off, and it was early. I didn't want to just sit around, and so at one of them I just tried to get gas with my card, and it let me just put my card in, and then when I tried to pump, the pump was off. However, there was still enough residual pressure in the pump that it like spit out 5 cents of gas. It's just like bleh. And it charged me 5 cents, and so then I pushed the button that said give me a receipt, and it actually printed a receipt out from the pump. So the pump power was on, and it printed a receipt for 5 cents. So that's the only receipt I have that's like a ridiculous receipt for 5 cents, because the pump was off. So I mean, it still counts. I still got 5 cents of gas. It's still a dated receipt showing Missouri, and it really was on the border. Like, I could see 50 feet down the road, I could see the sign that said welcome to Arkansas. So it was really close. That was my closest call for gas. You know, there's a lot of superlatives that I'm sure I'll come up with, like what was my favorite section, what was my least favorite section, what was my favorite state, what was the biggest surprise, what was the absolute worst awful section, what was the hottest section, what was the coldest section, what was the scariest section. I mean, I can think of all these superlatives. I'll need to go through. One of the most surprising places was sort of that eastern Washington, eastern Oregon section that I did a couple days ago. Particularly Oregon, that stretch going south to John Day through all those like scenic corridors, the Malheur National Forest. That was a surprisingly cool section. Very twisty and slow, but like totally not what I was expecting when I planned the route. And then the Washington part of it was just like the desolation of the scablands. It was very inhospitable and very hot. And then all those Midwest states, it's just miles and miles and miles of interstates. And then, you know, there was some sections that felt very familiar to me, almost felt like a break, because, oh, I know this section. This is just like sitting in an old comfortable chair, you know, like the section from Rochester, New York to Cleveland, Ohio is the drive that I've made hundreds and hundreds of times when I was in college, going back and forth between home and college. So when I got on I-90 in Rochester, I was like, oh yeah, I know all these exits. I know where all the service stations are. Yeah, it was really nice. And even though it's 250 miles, it felt like 100 just because it's so familiar. Fuel wise, I don't have the exact numbers, but I can tell you I started this trip with a no balance on my Apple Card, and I have $900 balance on it now, and that's just my Apple Card. I've also been like equally using my Chase Visa card, which also has my hotel rooms on it, so that's probably at least $1,000. Like I said, my budget for this trip was somewhere between $2,000 and $3,000. That's what I was estimating. I'm just gonna say it was about $3,000 when it was all said and done, but I'll do all the final numbers when I get home. So not cheap at all. Very expensive, an expensive privilege to be able to do this. Yeah, I saved up for it though, and obviously the motorcycle is not even paid off yet. It's pretty new, and now I've got to do $400 worth of repairs on that due to my little mishap in South Dakota. Picnic Spring Campground, creepy ass place. I'm looking up at these clouds. They're starting to get a little ominous, so I'm gonna bolt here and get down into Chinle and hang out in the Thunderbird Lodge tonight because that sounds delightful.